wanted to stay a while. See how it's done.
Terry and Jimmy come in. I had no idea what he had in his mind. So me and Jesse Johnson and Prince sitting in the studio, and Terry and Jimmy come in, and he's, you guys are fired. Just like that. I flew all my guys in.
Yep.
We get the call. Prince changed his mind. You guys are off the show.
They were born in his shadow, molded, polished, and set loose as his mirror image. The Time wasn't supposed to outshine Prince. They were meant to prove his genius by reflection. But somewhere between the laughter, the funk, and the glitter, the mirror cracked. What began as a side project turned into rebellion, and the protégés became rivals. This is the story of the band that dared to steal the spotlight from the Purple King. It all started with Prince's grand idea. He wanted a band that could be everything he wasn't: flashy, wild, and full of swagger. He built the Time like a mirror version of himself. Morris Day, his old friend, became the frontman. Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis came in with their producer brains and tight musicianship. Jesse Johnson added the guitar fire. Jelly Bean Johnson held down the drums. Monty Moyer on keys, and Jerome Benton brought the antics. On paper, it looked like a funk dream, but no one wants to play a puppet forever. Once the Time started blowing up, the cracks showed. Crowds loved them. Critics called them one of the tightest live bands out, but the paychecks didn't match the applause. Inside the band, things got tense too. Morris Day leaned harder into his over-the-top persona, and not everyone appreciated being part of his act.
How much beef or real competition was it between you and Prince?
It was, you know what? It was real. Even though it was in the movie at the time.
By the time that tour rolled around, things between Prince and the Time were on fire, and not the good kind. He had them out on the road with Vanity 6 and himself, all under one big purple circus meant to show off how massive his world had become. But the plan backfired. The Time weren't just opening the show, they were stealing it. Every night they tore it up. Their sets were hilarious, unpredictable, and so tight it almost felt illegal. Morris Day strutted around like he was starring in his own movie. Jerome Benton turned every cue into comedy, and the band hit every groove like it was their last. The crowds lost their minds, but every time the cheers leaned toward the Time instead of the headliner, Prince's smile got a little thinner. That's when things started to get nasty. Stories from the tour sounded more like a prank war than a concert run. The Time had to play behind a curtain for Vanity 6, worked longer hours, barely got paid more, and were sometimes kicked off sound checks completely. And the more they won over audiences, the more Prince tightened the leash. Then came the full-blown chaos. Food fights turned into humiliation contests. Prince's crew trashed the Time's dressing room with actual food, and the Time got them back. By the last show, it went nuclear. Eggs flying on stage, syrup dumped on Jerome. Jesse Johnson literally handcuffed to a rack while stuff got thrown at him. The place turned into a war zone. By sunrise, the hotel was wrecked and Morris was forced to pay the bill out of his own pocket. Prince's way of reminding everyone who was still in charge. But that night changed everything. The Time weren't just side characters anymore. They'd outgrown the script. They were too bold, too funny, too magnetic to stay under Prince's control. What started as mentorship had turned into competition. By the end, it was done. The reflection Prince created had cracked and walked off stage with its own spotlight. And waiting in that cold Minneapolis aftermath were two guys about to flip the whole thing on its head. Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis were about to make their move, and nothing in funk would ever sound the same again.
Prince would rehearse us for 6 hours.
Yeah.
Didn't he go rehearse a Revolution for 6 hours?
He was insane.
Didn't he go
I
to
heard
the
some
studio
crazy
all
stories.
night?
Yeah.
And
Well-
then he'd walk back in with a cassette and he'd stick it in and he'd go, I did this last night.
Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis were already thinking bigger. Between shows, they were sneaking off to build something of their own, cutting tracks for other artists, cooking up slick R&B grooves that felt different from Prince's world. It wasn't rebellion yet, just ambition. But ambition was dangerous around Prince. He didn't do side projects, he did obedience. Then came the night everything snapped. During the 1999 tour, Jam and Lewis got stuck in Atlanta working on production sessions that ran long, way longer than planned. Then the weather flipped. A snowstorm hit, grounding every flight out. They were supposed to be in San Antonio for a show, but the sky said no. The band went on without them, and Prince saw it as a betrayal, not bad luck. When they finally made it back, it wasn't a conversation, it was a firing. Quick, cold, final. Two of his best musicians, gone in one sweep. From the outside, it looked cruel. From the inside, it made sense. Prince didn't share his kingdom. The time weren't meant to grow beyond him, and Jam and Lewis had crossed that line.
Terry and Jimmy come in. I had no idea what he had in his mind. So me and Jesse Johnson and Prince sitting in the studio, and Terry and Jimmy come in, and he's, you guys are fired. Just like that.
But what looked like punishment turned out to be freedom. Stuck in the snow, they lost a job, but gained a mission. They turned their frustration into fuel and built their own production house, Flight Time. The sound they created was clean but emotional. Drum machines that punched, synths that shimmered, grooves that hit deep. When their songs for the SOS band took off, it was clear. They weren't just surviving after Prince, they were rewriting the rules. A few years later, that same formula found its perfect partner, Janet Jackson. Together, they created Control, an album that sounded like independence itself. Tight beats, glossy keys, and a sense of freedom that felt earned. It wasn't just music, it was a statement. Every kick drum echoed that moment they'd been stranded, the sound of breaking free from someone else's rulebook. After that, they became the blueprint. Everyone wanted that sound, from New Edition and Boys of Two Men to Mariah and Mary J. Blige. They turned precision into personality, discipline into soul, and proved that being fired by Prince wasn't the end. It was the start of their own empire, one that would end up shaping the sound of R&B for decades.
Wanted to stay a while, see how it's done.
Years later, the drama didn't fade. It just changed locations. The stage lights were gone, replaced by courtroom ones. After Prince passed, his estate took over everything. The songs, the archives, the money, and the fine print buried in old contracts. And tucked in one of those papers was a forgotten clause that would reopen one of the band's oldest scars. Out of nowhere, word got out that Morris Day had been told he couldn't perform as Morris Day in the Time anymore. The reaction was instant. Confusion, disbelief, outrage. How could the face of the group suddenly be told he didn't own his own name? But according to the estate's lawyers, it was technical. Back when the Time first started, Prince's company had locked down the rights to the name. On paper, it wasn't Morris's to use, even though he'd been using it for decades. To Morris, it felt personal. He'd been carrying that name on tour long after the spotlight shifted, with Prince's approval more often than not. Now the estate was saying he needed permission to keep doing what he'd always done. Fans were furious. The estate tried to smooth it over with a careful statement about misunderstandings. But leaked letters told a different story. They had flat out said he had no right to use the name at all. For a while, it all went quiet. Then without warning, the tide turned. Morris filed for ownership of Morris Day and the Time, and the estate didn't fight it. No objections, no interference. The trademark moved forward, a small but satisfying win for the man who started it all. Still, the unease lingered, because it was never really about a name. It was about who got to claim the legacy. The estate had more of these battles going too. Even Apollonia, the actress and singer from Purple Rain, found herself in a similar mess. She'd been using her name for years, but now the estate wanted control over that too. Her team argued that Prince never stopped her while he was alive, so why should anyone else? The cases mirrored each other. People who helped build Prince's world now having to fight to keep their own names in it. It wasn't just legal, it was emotional. The same people who helped shape his universe were being told they no longer owned their place in it. The funk had turned into fine print, and this time, nobody was laughing.
Baby, can't you see? Girl, I'm so...
Time moved on, but the funk never died. Everyone from the Time went their own way, carving out pieces of legacy that still ripple through music. Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis became untouchable, the kind of producers who didn't just make hits, they rewired R&B itself. Jesse Johnson took a quieter road, but left behind something just as lasting. His guitar tone, sharp, funky, and full of attitude, became the template for players who wanted to dance between rock and funk without losing cool. Jerome Benton kept the spirit alive in his own way too. He was still that mix of chaos and charm, reminding everyone that funk wasn't supposed to be serious. It was supposed to be fun, messy, and loud enough to make you grin. And then there was Morris Day. He'd been through every storm, public drama, personal battles. But somewhere along the way, he stopped running from it. His book laid it all bare, the charm, the ego, the insecurities. He wrote about the struggle of separating the man from the character and how easy it was to lose yourself when the mask became the job. There were moments of regret, yes, but also moments of peace. Small flashes of clarity where he made peace with Prince, with himself, and with the chaos that built them both. The thing is, the time never really disappeared. Their fingerprints were all over today's stars. Bruno Mars brought back the suits, the swagger, the choreography, all with that same mix of polish and play. Anderson .Paak carried their looseness and humor into a new era. Silk Sonic, with their retro confidence and slick showmanship, felt like a direct echo of the time's energy. That sweet spot where precision meets personality. What they created had become part of pop DNA. That blend of control and chaos, groove and comedy, turned into a blueprint. And though not everyone stayed in the spotlight, their spirit never left. The funk just evolved, changing outfits, finding new voices, but never losing that pulse.